On the 29th of February of this year in 2020, the United States and the Taliban reached an agreement to start putting forth the process to end the current war in Afghanistan. Main focuses of the agreement were the eventual removal of US troops from Afghanistan and for the Taliban to aid in the removal of Al-Qaeda. But before we dive deeper into the current negotiations and cooperation between the United States and the Taliban, let's first go over a brief summary of the conflict. The current phase of the war in Afghanistan began when the United States and NATO invaded the Central Asian country following the September 11th attacks in 2001. Reasoning for the invasion was due to the Taliban government granting asylum to the terrorists responsible for the attack, that being Osama bin Laden. The Taliban initially stated that it would hand over Osama bin Laden if the US provided direct evidence to the Taliban that Osama bin Laden was indeed responsible for the September 11th attacks. However, to the United States, a nation harboring a wanted terrorist is a terrorist action of its own, thus bringing up the US policy, we do not negotiate with terrorists. So from the start, there was already a major communication problem between the United States and the Taliban government due to the two's proposed policies, thus leading to war. There was, however, a key policy that stood out regarding the United States' approach to the Taliban. The policy being that of refusing to recognize the Taliban as a terrorist organization. After all, the Taliban does fit the US criteria of a terrorist group, attacks targeting civilians, attacks targeting government entities of Afghanistan and the US, and many more reasonings. There is, however, a key difference between the Taliban and other terrorist groups. The Taliban is often given the label as a reluctant terrorist group, meaning that the group still has the possibility of carrying out terrorist-like actions, but the group's main goal is to seek some sort of discussion, compromise, or peace. Compromises with groups like the Taliban usually range from agreements on government influence, creation of political parties, or division of land in order to end a violent conflict. This drastically differs from other terrorist groups like ISIS or Boko Haram, who seek to spread their word or influence through pure violent means. Yes, the Taliban still acts upon terrorist-like plots. We are not ignoring such, but there is a major key difference between them and other terrorist groups as mentioned before. The United States' refusal to recognize the Taliban as a designated terrorist group has shown to be quite useful in the two's current discussions, with many US officials claiming wouldn't be happening if the US and NATO were to go about labeling the group as a terrorist group. So here we are today, and how exactly are these peace talks going? Well, it's extremely mixed. On one hand, the US and the Taliban have not had any direct confrontation directly ordered by the two groups since the February peace talks. There has, however, been lone wolf type attacks such as Russian private militaries placing bounties on US troops for which some Taliban members would act upon and take out, but there has not been any direct confrontation ordered by the Taliban itself or ordered by the US itself against one another. So what's the issue, you're saying? Well, there's one key entity left out of these talks: the Afghan government. The Taliban and the United States have stopped engaging one another since February. But the Taliban is still targeting the Afghan government itself and other attacks on the local government. There can't be an actual end to the war in Afghanistan if the local government is not present or taking part in these peace negotiations. Many politicians and historians are calling these negotiations a failure due to the lack of Afghan involvement, fearing another 2011 Iraq-type situation where the US withdraws military too soon, only to return to a bloodier conflict later on down the line. So unless the Afghan government is brought into these peace negotiations, it's sadly likely that we will not see an end to this conflict anytime soon. If you want to learn more about the United States' involvement in Afghanistan, please click the link in the description to my very first video that goes over the relationship between the United States and the country of Afghanistan. See you guys soon.